All right. As I've said, I record the lectures for at least one class period. That way I can post it online, and then students can't say I wasn't here. I can't be responsible for the information. If you're not here, still responsible for the information, still need to know it. Or if you love the sound of my soothing voice, which I get complimented on two things all the time: my great hair and my great voice. So and I don't think anybody would ever be sarcastic towards me. That would be uncalled for and rude, because I'm never sarcastic towards other people. All right, so Unit 1, nope, wrong. Unit 0, Day 3. Unit 0, Day 3, we're going to talk about Zealots, Herodians, and Hellenists. Talking about the political climate, or what makes up the political climate. All right, these are big components of component groups of Judeo. Girls, you can come on in. If you can't finish the summary, that's okay. Palestine, political climate. All right, these are three of our major groups here. We're going to talk about, you guys will see them. Is someone still there? I swear that was the fourth one. All right, these are the Zealots, Herodians, and Hellenists. They're the component group of Judeo-Palestine political climate. Those are big fancy words. They just mean these are three types of social groups in the area that had very distinct beliefs that are going to be talked about. Jesus is going to be talking towards or about or around some of these people as we get through the New Testament. We're also, the book that you guys started today, The Shadow of the Galilean, is going to mention people that fall into all three of these. Right? New Testament definitely talks about the Zealots a lot. One of the disciples is called Simon the Zealot, so we're going to talk about him later on. Keep these guys in mind. These guys are my favorite guys. You'll see why later. I'm not going to spend as much time, but I need to give a quick history lesson. I'm going to give the warning. My notes are about to get absolutely bonkers today, not on purpose. Again, as with all things, we blame Yair for it. All right, some things we blame Jaden for, other things Yair. It's his fault that I take bad notes. It just is. That's how it works. All right. So we're going to do our best on our history lesson. Does anybody remember from my class what happened in 586 BCE that was a big deal for the Old Testament? 586 BCE. Does anybody know what happened at that time that was a major, major deal? If you're in my class, you should shout it out. Show me that you remember something. What? Oh, come on, guys. I know you know this. We talked about it all the time. It's like the reason the Old Testament's written. No. You know what? I appreciate that you tried. Babylonian exile, and destruction of temple. Do you guys all now remember that? Babylonian exile and destruction of temple. It's like, come on, we should have known that. That is major important thing. In 586 BCE, the Babylonians destroy the Jerusalem temple, and they exile all the people from Israel. Now, does anybody know why they do that? God punishes Israel. All right. God's punishment for worshiping other gods, and taking in other cultures. This is going to show up in just a second. We're going to need to know this. This gives some big context for the events that I'm about to go through. All right? God's punishment for worshiping other gods and taking in other cultures. Not supposed to do that thing. The Old Testament is all about don't do this thing. And when they do it, God punishes them for it. Now, they repent. God has mercy. And in 539 BC, return to Judah, Persia conquers Babylon. All right, so the Persians take over. 539, and they start letting the people return to the land they came from. So you can be your own people now. You can have your own place. You're going to be good. But Persia still rules. They're in charge, but it's a lot better. It's not the exile anymore. Then I'm going to skip some time. We could go through some other things like this, but then we get Seleucid's rise. Seleucid, I'm going to put Greek Empire, about 300 BCE, I think. I don't remember the exact date. This one's a little less relevant. If you don't know the date, whatever. Seleucid or Greek Empire shows up. All right, they start Hellenization, start Hellenizing. I'm going to tell you what this means. This is a great vocabulary word for you to have for the day. Start Hellenizing. Start Hellenization. All right. Hellenization. This is a fancy way of saying forcibly exporting culture, Greek language, customs, and religion. All right, they start forcibly exporting Greek language, customs, and religion. They say you have to be this. This is what they start doing. All right, so they start going place to place and saying, become like us, assimilate or get eliminated. All right, assimilate or eliminate is the option. So they start conquering people and saying, you have to be Greek. They win out culturally. They end up losing as a nation, but they end up winning culturally. So we call this Hellenism. Hellenism or Hellenistic is cultural influence from Greeks on non-Greek people. So maybe you are not a Greek person, but you act Greek. We have some of this happen in modern times, right? We'll talk about that more in just a bit. The Hellenists are those types of people. They are Jews that act and talk Greek. They're not perfectly Greek. They're still Jews, and they're going to say, I'm a Jew, I am this, but they're going to be very much influenced by Greek culture and have a lot of that influence in their beliefs and language and things like this. They're Greek speakers, right? You could say this happens with modern people, right? Colonialism happened. This is colonialism in some ways. This is, even if you say I am Mexican, and yet you speak English, right? This is some of this type of action. Now, this is much more forced. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But we have some of this even in modern times. This cultural influence on people whose culture it would not naturally be otherwise. All right. We're going to skip. This is where we get to my favorite time here. This is why this lecture is longer today, is because I absolutely love this stuff. I could talk about these guys, and I'm about to in a moment, for so long. Is 167 BCE is the Maccabean Revolt. Maccabean Revolt. All right, 167 Maccabean Revolt. Antiochus the fourth see, perverts temple and tries to Hellenize Jews. Tries to Hellenize. All right. He shows up and he tells the Jews, you have to be like us. And then, in fact, he goes in, perverts the temple. So what he does is he sacrifices a pig on the altar, on God's altar, which, if you know anything about Judaism, that's a big no-no, right? One of the big things is you can't eat pork. And so he takes it, he goes and goes, well, our God, Zeus, loves pork, loves when we put pig on the altar. So he goes to the Jewish temple, he destroys it, tears it down, puts a new altar to Zeus, and sacrifices in the middle of the temple a pig. It's a big, big deal. Right? It's a big insult, and he's saying, our God has conquered yours. We win. And then he says to the Jews, you need to Hellenize and be like us. Now, does anybody think, are they going to like this and love this? No, right? We know this because a few hundred years before, God had punished them severely for Hellenizing and for becoming like them. So, to this, they say no. Some of them are going to say, yes, we're okay with this, right? Some of them become Hellenizers. Some of them become Jewish. And the ways that, or become Greek. And the ways this works is, I'm going to give some of the, I'm going to give, because I want this area for more timeline stuff, I'm going to put a spot over here of what happens. All right. No Jewish law allowed. No Jewish law. No Jewish law allowed. No circumcision. No circumcising infants. And get Greek language. All right, there's a few others. All right, no Jewish law allowed. You cannot follow the Torah anymore. You want to follow that diet? You want to take Saturdays to not to sit around and rest and have Sabbath? No, not allowed anymore. You cannot practice the Sabbath. You want to go to synagogue? No, not allowed to do that anymore. Follow our gods or die is what they start telling me. They say no circumcising. You're not allowed to circumcise. Who knows? Do you guys all know what circumcising is? You know, what is it? Thank you for asking. I would love to explain circumcising. See, circumcision is where males are born with a foreskin, extra skin on the end of their penis, and the custom of circumcision is when a baby is 8 years old, baby boy, they take him and they snip off that skin. All right, they cut the excess, the foreskin they call it, they cut it off the end of the penis. This is a custom the Jews practiced. They said you have to do it. It's very important to do. And in ancient culture, guess what? For Greek culture especially, they have public bathhouses. So you go to the public bath as a male, you're naked. So it's pretty obvious if somebody's circumcised or not. All right? In the book of Maccabees, it actually talks about how they would try to uncircumcise themselves. How you do that, I know sort of how they tried. I'm not going to get into that detail because we don't need to talk. I don't need to talk more about circumcision and foreskin and penises with 15 and 16-year-old kids. So I'm just going to stop saying penis and foreskin and circumcision. All right? I'll stop saying it. You don't have to hear me say penis or circumcision again. All right. Guys, when we get to further in the Bible, we're going to get some more of this stuff. This stuff is all over the Bible. It loves talking about this stuff. But this is a big deal for them. You can't circumcise anymore. You can't do this thing. And they would know. They would see it. All right, so they started enforcing this law. They started enforcing this law through the penalty of death. If you circumcise your child, they're going to punish you and say, if you want to practice a religion that isn't ours, we're going to murder you. We're going to kill you. It gets so severe. We're going to talk about some of the penalties in just a little bit. These guys, the Maccabees, all right, the Maccabees are a family. All right, Maccabees. So, Maccabees. Jewish family that fights for freedom, fights, I'm going to say Seleucid oppression. Sorry this is so low down here, guys. I didn't mean to do this, but it is what it is. Seleucid oppression. All right. So here's the basic story, and we're going to get this. I'll put this detailed in First Maccabees. All right. The Maccabean revolt is detailed in a book called First Maccabees. If you're Catholic, it's in your Bible. You guys believe this is part of the canonical Bible. If you're Protestant, it's not in your Bible. I personally, my personal bias is that it should be. As a Protestant, I think this should be in here. It's a very influential text. What it is that the Seleucids show up, they start going town to town, and they show up in a small town, very small town, where this guy Mattathias is his name, and his son Judah and his other sons live. So he goes up to the people, and they grab one person, or they grab all the men, and they say, we're going to sacrifice, we brought an altar to Zeus, you're going to sacrifice a pig, and you're going to participate in doing this, so that we know you're not Jewish anymore, or we're going to kill you. So do this thing, become Hellenistic, and then we're going to leave you, we're going to kind of leave you be and let you guys do your own thing, as long as you worship our gods. So one of the Jewish guys in the village goes to do this. And what happens is Mattathias runs up, grabs a spear from one of the soldiers, slaughters immediately the guy that was the Jewish man that was about to sacrifice the pig. He kills him, and then he starts killing soldiers. So then his oldest son Judah goes, bet, let's go for it, grabs spears, and then all of the 5 sons, there's like 5 guys, they all grab weapons, steal them from the soldiers, and they start a revolt. All right, so they run to the hills, and they start violence. And they start a time of extreme unrest, a 6-year fight that gets detailed in First Maccabees. I think it's about 6 years. It mostly ends 161. It keeps on going for other things later. But they start a fight, and eventually, by 100 BCE, creates Hasmonean dynasty. So here's what happens during this revolt. During this revolt and Antiochus's persecution, the persecution is extreme. All right, I talked about First Maccabees. We also have a book called Second Maccabees. Second Maccabees details persecution, details the persecution. All right, Second Maccabees. So here's the thing. To get to the Hasmonean dynasty, to get to a time of peace for the Jews, the Hasmonean dynasty, I'll talk about in a moment. Hasmonean dynasty is a Jewish free nation. Well, Jewish independent nation. Jewish independent nation. All right. By 100 BC, they earn their own freedom as an independent people. They have their own kingdom. They're their own people. But they suffer to get there. All right. They fight and die. By fighting and dying, what happens? What happens if people start pushing back against the tyrannical government? The tyrannical government starts squeezing harder, right? They're trying to put a stop to it. We know some of this stuff. We've seen it or read about it. I'm not going to go into details on that, but you guys can have that in your heads, whatever you think that means. The thing is, they experienced an extreme version of this. It was bad enough that they thought we need to fight and die for this. We need to kill for this. The Maccabees experienced a time where literally if somebody was caught circumcising their kids and practicing the law, they were ripping babies out of women's wombs. So pregnant women were cut apart, had their stomachs cut open, the baby ripped out with the umbilical cord attached to the baby and hung around her neck while she was paraded through the street for her and the baby to die. This is what Second Maccabees details, is these types of things are happening. The Seleucids are doing this. It's crazy, right? They're hanging women with their babies over the city walls to say, do not circumcise your kids or try to make them Jewish, or we're going to make you suffer for it. Right? It's public and it's brutal. There's a story in Second Maccabees where a woman has a whole bunch of kids. I think it's like 10 kids. I don't know exactly. I can't remember. But she has a bunch of kids, all boys. And I'm going to go ahead and say I don't think this story happened. I think that this is them trying to really make it sound more really intense and show just how bad this suffering was. But this woman has... Oh, wow, we are cooking through time. All right, this woman has about 10 kids. And all boys, the soldiers grab her and her sons, and they take the oldest one that's like 20, 22, and they say, all right, it's time for you to just denounce your God. And if you don't, we're going to fillet you alive, we're going to skin you, take all your skin off your body, throw you on a giant skillet like you cook on, over a fire, and kill you. That's how you're going to die. So he says, I won't renounce my God. They do that to him. Then in the story, they go to the next kid, and the next kid, and the next kid. They keep on going until we get to her with a 3-year-old son. And the soldiers pull her aside and they say, lady, please, for the love of your God, please tell your son, your 3-year-old, to renounce God. And so she says, okay, let me talk with him. So she pulls him aside and she tells her 3-year-old, never by any means renounce your God. Go to your death. And then the 3-year-old goes up, they skin him alive, throw him on a skillet. This is the story. Now, I'm not going to say this necessarily happened. That's not the point. The point is that what they're doing with these writings is they're saying that's the suffering we went through to get our nation. Right? We earned our freedom. Our people earned our freedom. So they have freedom until, all right, Rome conquers. Culturally Hellenistic, culturally Hellenic or Hellenistic, Hellenic, Hasmonean dynasty ends. Dynasty ends by 30 BCE. All right, sorry for these sloppy notes, guys, but all right, by 30 BCE, 30 years before Jesus, Rome conquers. They become culturally Hellenistic. They're still Greek-speaking, even though culturally they lose, but they win as an empire. Their empire wins. They end the Hasmonean dynasty. All right. Now, the Hasmoneans, the Jews, are so privileged. All right. They give special privileges. We'll talk about it in just one moment if I can still get there time-wise. All right. So the Hasmonean dynasty ends, and we can see all of this information is incredibly relevant, right? It's 30 years, 40 years before Jesus. Right before Jesus died or is born, this stuff has been happening. It's theoretically possible that his grandparents lived during the Hasmonean dynasty, right towards the end, but possible. So we have to think when Jesus is talking and there's Hellenists around, people that are Greek-speaking, and they know about this story, not everybody loves the Greek speakers, right? They're like, man, why are you betraying our people? So Hellenists are ethnically Jewish, ethnically and religiously Jewish, culturally Greek. So maybe they're not loved. If we know this history, they exist, but there's going to be some serious tension, right? There is a real tension there. Then our next group that we're talking about, I think I can get us through here time-wise, is the Herodians. All right. These guys follow Herod as, quote, king of the Jews. All right. Herod is the king of the Jews. Herod is the governor governor put in place by Rome. Put in place by Rome. He helps rebuild temple, he helps fund temple. So they get to rebuild the temple because he helps fund it. And then he's half Jewish. All right, he's half Jewish. His followers, he's the status quo Messiah. All right, status quo, possible Messiah. So you can see we're starting to get these ideas in the culture. These guys are like, all right, maybe we have a Messiah, whatever. They're not going to be as aggressively religious. They're letting themselves acclimate to another culture. These guys are going to say, well, these people actually gave us our Messiah. We have our Messiah right here. It's Herod. Great. These are usually the wealthier people. These are your status quo people. All right? These are the people that say, we don't need things to change. It works out perfectly fine for me. I'm just going to give it as an example. I could say, doesn't matter what we have going on. I saw that there's a possible walkout tomorrow from students. I could say, well, it doesn't matter what's going on in Minnesota because it's not happening in Milwaukee. It doesn't affect me, right? I could say maybe it doesn't matter. These are the status quo people. Then we have our final group. I wish I could spend more time on these guys. All right, zeal. Vocab word, here we go. Passionate belief in something. Passionate. Zeal equals passionate belief in something. All right, so zealots. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's Hellenization. Yeah. So Hellenization. Perfect. Thank you so much for clarifying. All right. So zealots are religious extremists. Religious extremists. All right. Religious extremists, revolutionaries. They want Jewish independence. Want independence. Willing to be violent. Willing to use violence. All right, these guys are willing to use violence if necessary to get back to a Jewish free state. What do you think these guys want their Messiah to be like? Anybody have a guess? They want their Messiah to be like the Maccabees, right? They're looking backwards to the Maccabees and going, man, that guy, if those guys weren't the Messiah is going to rip, right? He's going to come through and tear people apart and conquer Rome. They want a conquering, warring Messiah. They don't care if they have to use violence. They are extremists, right? They don't care. They were literally attacking Roman supply lines, attacking Roman towns, causing riots in the streets, trying to do everything they could to get rid of Rome. They didn't care about violence. These guys want conquerors. They want a violent Messiah. When Jesus, I would argue that this is what I'm trying to get at, is that when Jesus talks about eye for eye, tooth for tooth, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those that persecute you, I don't think there's any more direct language than he's speaking to them. He's saying, stop with the violence, love your enemies. Right? Your enemies are people that were ripping babies out of wombs. I want you to love and pray for them. It's not just being nice to somebody. It's love the unlovable. That's what he's saying. So we're going to get into more of that. Sorry for going so long on this, but here's the thing. We have two ways of calling and identifying these guys, and we're going to see it by different groups in our book. we either call them revolutionaries, we call them another word for that is freedom fighters. Does anybody know what you call a revolutionary or a freedom fighter if they lose? What do you call a revolutionary / freedom fighter if they lose? What do you call them? There you go. You call them terrorists. All right, if they win, they're revolutionaries. If they lose or they're on another side, they're terrorists. Romans call them terrorists. We like to call them, because we're on their side, revolutionaries. All right, that's what these guys use and employ. So go ahead, pack up. Sorry for taking so long on the lecture. Well done, guys. I'll give you. Can I have somebody remind me? Q, I feel like you can, and Daisy or Miguel. Can one of you guys remind me next class that I owe you the exit tickets from today? Yeah? And I'll give you the answers as well. I'll give you the questions and answers next class. Yep. Oh, guys, I need that green folder for the do nows. Perfect. Sorry, guys, this was longer than I meant it to be. We extended my reading time too. Please, not like God was still waiting. Please. Thank you. You got to stop talking about things I love.